This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, the Islamic terror in the United Kingdom. What an honor it is to have with us this evening Paul Weston, the leader of the Liberty Great Britain Party. Paul Weston, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Jamie.
And it's an honor to have you here. Let's just begin with the London Bridge Massacre, Theresa May's response. There seems to be this ongoing cycle, jihad attacks, and then the denials. Let's begin with this. This is a tragedy, Paul.
Well, it's a tragedy, it's a crime, and let's not forget that it's the third incident in just over the last few weeks. And it is always the same predictable response, all the teddy bears and the vigils and the lamentations and the heartfelt notes. And then life goes on again as normal until the next one happens. And, they said that, or our intelligence services have said that over the last 3 months, they've actually stopped 5 more of these happening, but didn't stop 3. This is only over a few months. So clearly these things are going to happen again. And clearly our response, unless things change enormously, is going to be the same rather useless platitudes and no action again.
You know what I think is as I said, tragedy, you said criminal. I would say, both in terms of what I'd like to bring up here. We got this London Bridge killer mastermind running around. Everybody already knows, the police know. He's been reported many times. He unfurled an ISIS flag in a park in a documentary, but he's running around. And yet, if I'm not mistaken, recently or several years ago, you were actually arrested for quoting Ward Churchill.
Yes. Now, you can understand in Britain today that committing hate crimes is one of the biggest and most viciously cracked down upon by our law enforcement. But hate crimes are obviously, quoting Winston Churchill, hate crimes are not gang raping young girls or blowing people up with bombs, which is the most insane. We have the protected classes, and Muslims in Britain are a protected class. So therefore, hate crimes can be committed against them by looking at them the wrong way. But yeah, Mayor Khan the other day, who was sworn into office on the Quran and has a very background of many extremists that he's been defending over the years, the other day said that he could not in London provide enough resources to cover the 400 known jihadis who've returned from Libya and Syria. But they do have the resources to crack down on all of the internet hate crime and arrest and rearrest again Tommy Robinson, arrest me occasionally. They don't quite have their priorities the way that perhaps they ought to be.
No, absolutely. No, I just it's surreal what's happening. So somebody can unfurl an ISIS flag, and that's okay. Quoting Ward Churchill, you go to jail. Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller not allowed in the UK, but these killers are allowed in the UK. And one thing's going on for sure, and you've referred to this, and you call it the traitor class in the leadership, also in the media. Paul, tell us about this, because the United Kingdom is clearly committing suicide, but it's committing suicide because of who's steering the ship.
What a wonderful expression that is. It's the Titanic. It's heading towards the iceberg. All the passengers can see what's going to happen. They're all telling the captain and the first mate change course, and they just resolutely are not changing course, and they're arresting the passengers. So what else can you call them but the traitor class? They know what's going on. They know how people feel about it. They are cracking down on their own population rather than on the aggressor, the incomers and the aggressors. They know full well what they're doing, and I understand why they're doing it. They know that if they were to actually take proper action against the Muslim community, there would be proper insurgency, proper civil war. None of them wanted on their political watch, so they're just going to kick it down the road. So it's easier to clamp down on us than it is to clamp down on them. Another problem on that is that our politicians side of the BBC, and the BBC are very hugely important in this whole thing with the traitor class, because the influence they place on our politicians is enormous. No politician will tell the truth on a BBC program, because he will be eviscerated by the BBC and by the left-wing media the next day, and his career will be over. So the combined media and political class are absolutely the traitor class.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, Paul, as somebody that dedicated my life to studying the left, of course, also the hatred of democracy, the hatred of freedom, the self-hatred, and they just want to really destroy their own society and Western civilization, and they're in league with any forces that want to help them do that.
Of course, your background, Jamie, you know absolutely how this works. Unfortunately, most people don't. Most people don't believe the BBC, for example, is evil. It is united in evil. I don't know if you can see it. It's on my bookshelf just behind me. Just over my left-hand shoulder is your book, Jamie.
Excellent.
Excellent book.
Thank you very much, Paul. Before we move over to some of your proposed solutions, your thoughts on Prime Minister Theresa May and her, I guess I would call, pathetic statements after the London Bridge massacre.
Theresa May's whole thing was just absolute defeatism. You cannot deal with a situation unless you accept what the truth about the situation is. And when she talks about Islamism rather than Islam, and Islamism being a perversion of Islam and a perversion of the truth, then you know that the core problem is not going to be looked at or resolved or dealt with. But everybody thought that it was, but of course it isn't. You cannot defeat an enemy unless you can name an enemy, and at the moment she can't.
Absolutely. And what a dark comedy it is that they keep saying that it's a perversion of the truth, and yet the overwhelming numbers of the devout Muslims and imams and muftis and clerics all believe in this perversion, quote unquote, of the truth. So how do you answer this? But we know what the answer is. Paul, if you had some power, and if you were able to start pushing things through to save your country and Western civilization, what would be some of the things you would propose that needs to start happening?
Well, I think absolutely the first thing is to say, look, no more Muslim immigration into Britain. Just no more. Not one more Muslim comes into the country. Even then, we're going to have problems in the future because of the high birth rates and our low birth rates. But the immediate thing, no more immigration. And the second thing would be to make life very difficult to practice Islam in Britain. So you'd have to go around to all of the mosques and monitor them for seditious material and all the homophobic, the misogynistic, the kill the kafir stuff. And if that's what they're talking those not, then close them down completely. No ifs and buts, they're just closed down. Something that clearly is so incredibly for the politicians to tell the truth about the Quran and the Hadiths and to tell the truth about Islam is so important, because they're still not doing it. Other things you could do, Saudi Arabian money coming in. I mean, it is massive amounts, massive, thousands of millions of pounds. And this is building the mosque. You've got to stop all Saudi Arabian money. You've got to stop all foreign-born imams. You've got to stop all imams who don't speak English. You have to close down all of the Muslim organizations in this country, because they're nearly all being used or funded by money that is either coming in from extremism or going out towards extremism. The same thing with the British charities. Close down all the British charities, which are all fronts, as far as I can see, for raising money for jihad. Ban halal meat. If you can no longer have halal meat, they're not going to like that very much. Get rid of the Sharia courts. We have close on to 100 Sharia courts. Get rid of those. Close down sovereign wealth funds. There are so many things. Again, one of the more important things is to stop paying the Muslims to colonize us. We can only really afford to have 1 to 2 children in this country, because we actually go out to work. The Muslims who are not working can have anything up to 16 children, a minimum of 4 children, and lots of them are doing it because we are paying for their housing and their schooling and everything. So stop all of that.
But Paul, one second. Everything you're saying would lead to less terrorism. It would stop the Islamization, slow down the Islamization of the UK. It would stop Sharia from taking over the UK. But don't you think it's more important to stop people from quoting Ward Churchill, don't let Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller into the country, and put Tommy Robinson in jail? Aren't those more important priorities?
You say it in jest, Jamie, but the saddest thing is that at the moment, those are the greater priorities, and our governments are not going to do what I've just suggested. But they are going to keep on going after people like Tommy Robinson. They are going to, Theresa May was the one that stopped Robert and Pamela coming into the country, and Theresa May is also the one that let in, I can't remember the guy's name, but the skull crushing jihadi extremist. She let him in. So no, they're not going to take my recommendations up. They will keep on stopping the Pamelas and Roberts of this world, and we will, I fear, very, very gently and very, very slowly, by which I mean 10 to 20 years, we will very slowly just slide into an Islamic society, fairly peacefully, but just slide into one.
Well, Paul, that was my attempt at humor at a very dark, surreal, tragic criminal reality that's occurring. Look, Paul, in terms of what you want to save your country, you're a brave man. Do you find support out there for you? Is it more on the street level from the common people? Are the authorities and the government really that insulated now? Have the Islamic forces penetrated the left in power so much that alliance can't be dented into?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens now, because we haven't had 3 terrorist incidents in a row like this before. We had obviously 2005, we've had isolated, and we had Lee Rigby. But there was so much space in between that thought about it. I don't know what's going to happen now. If we were to have another 2 or 3 over the next 3 months, I honestly think that the contract between whoever these people are in the Muslim world who seem to have total control over our government, I don't believe our government could go on submitting in public before them like that. So that is something that I don't know about. At the moment, all of our support basically comes from the street and the working class, right, because they have little to lose. Every single person that does support us, who comes from a professional background, always says, obviously I can't come up to a march or a demonstration. Obviously I can't use my real name because I will lose my job. And that is a massive problem, because if you can't get a respectable, civilized, middle-class, vocal, obvious backing, it's very easy for the authorities to say, you just represent a bunch of knuckle-dragging, tattooed extremist hooligans, which is precisely why they have engineered that situation in the first place.
Paul, before we go on a personal note, on a personal level, many people do not stand up. Many people don't get up and get involved. What led Paul Weston to stand up and, in many respects, I don't think this is an exaggeration to say, to put his life on the line and risk his life for defending his country?
I suppose it's basically my fault for finding out too much about something. I know enough now that I simply cannot ignore what I know, because I can look down the line and my only logical sort of projection of where we are now is the fact that we are either going to be in total submission in 20, 30 years' time, or we're going to have some dreadful civil war like 1990s Yugoslavia, but based on an entire continent. So what's going to happen is too horrendous to ignore. I wish I didn't know about it. I'd be much happier not knowing about it and just toddling off to work somewhere. And, I genuinely would, but I know enough about it, and I cannot ignore it as a result. And I think that's why, when I first started on this, it was not just on my research about what is going wrong with England. It was way back. It was over 10 years ago. And Islam at that time was not the number one focal point. It was about education. It was about propaganda, indoctrination, the takeover of the civil service, the politicization of the police. It was about all by the left. But that was my main driver at the time. And then Islam slowly came to dominate it, because all the other things can be fixed. Unless Islam is fixed immediately, there's nothing you can do about it in 10, 20 years' time.
Absolutely, Paul. We are out of time. Let us hope that masses and masses of citizens in the UK watch this show, and they've been so inspired that they want to contact you and support you. How do they do it?
They can go on to our website, Liberty GB, which I think is libertygb.org.uk. And there is a thing on there. You can join as overseas members for $20 or something. I think as much support as we can get, would be wonderful. The most peculiar thing about all of this is that we get more vocal support from America than we do from England. A lot of the English are just so cowed now, and I don't know really, and honestly, if they can be saved. But the Americans' completely different approach. They're much more positive. They're much more interested in us than we are in us, which astonishes me. But thank you very much, America. Yet again on a huge issue, you are becoming involved. In a European issue. I know it's happening with you there, and I've always said that the thing with America is to look primarily at. It used to be Sweden, and don't let that happen to you. But it's now England as well, and now massively quickly Germany, with all of the millions that are going in there. So for God's sake, don't let this happen to your country.
Paul, thank you so much. And I'd also like just to take a second to thank our good mutual friend, Amy Meck, that brought us together.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Amy, if you're watching this.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. And Paul, thank you for coming on the show, and keep up the fight, and best of luck to you.
Many thanks, and thank you for having me on, Jamie. And keep up the fight also. Really vital. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul Weston. An honor. Thank you for watching the Glazov Gang this evening. Remember, we're a fan-generated program. If you like what we do, go to jamieglazov.com to support the show. And please make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel of the Glazov Gang. We'll see you soon. Good night.